The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on Miller's salvage yard, turning metal into griddles and air into something you could choke on. 110 degrees. Dorothy Hayes had seen hot days, but this was the kind of heat that killed. That's when she heard it. A sound so faint, she almost missed it over the desert wind. Scratching, metal scraping against metal. A whimper. She followed the noise to the back corner, behind a mountain of crushed cars. Two metal crates sat baking in the sun, locks gleaming. Empty water bowls lay nearby, claw marks scraped into the dirt around them. Dorothy's hands shook as she approached the first cage. Inside, a German shepherd lay collapsed, ribs visible through matted fur. But his body was positioned deliberately, protectively, shielding a second cage behind him. His amber eyes found hers, one small movement of his tail. He was still hoping someone would come. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. 6 months before Dorothy found those cages, Marcus Webb had been a different kind of broken. At 35, he looked older. 3 years since Afghanistan. 3 years since he'd come home with a Purple Heart he kept in a drawer and nightmares he couldn't escape. The garage he owned, Webb's Auto Repair, sat on the outskirts of Phoenix, right next to Miller's salvage yard. Most days, Marcus went through the motions, fix cars, avoid conversation, go home to an empty apartment where the curtains stayed drawn. The divorce had been final for 2 years. Rachel had tried. God knows she'd tried. But living with a man who woke up screaming and couldn't hold his own son without shaking had worn her down. She'd remarried and moved to Seattle. Took their boy Connor with her. Connor was 8 now. Marcus got him every other weekend, and those visits were the only times Marcus remembered what it felt like to want to be alive. The kid would show up with his backpack and his nervous smile, and they'd spend 2 days trying to figure out how to be father and son again. It never quite worked. Marcus could see it in Connor's eyes. That sadness, that confusion. This wasn't the dad Connor remembered from before the war, before Mac. Marcus didn't like thinking about Max, but the memories came anyway. Usually at 3 in the morning, Max had been his combat medic dog in Afghanistan, a German shepherd trained to help carry supplies and calm wounded soldiers. Smart, loyal, brave in ways that made Marcus's chest ache even now. The IED had torn through their convoy on a routine patrol. Marcus had been thrown clear, ears ringing, vision blurred. He'd looked up to see an insurgent raising a rifle. And then Max was there, 70 pounds of fur and fury. Taking the bullets meant for Marcus's head. Marcus had held him while he died. Felt Max's heartbeat fade. Made a promise he'd kept for 3 years, never again, never another dog. The pain was too much. Dorothy Hayes had been watching Marcus deteriorate from her junkyard next door. At 67, she'd buried her husband and her son, and she recognized that particular shade of grief. Her boy James had served in the same unit as Marcus, had written letters home mentioning Webb, the medic who saved my life twice. James had made it home from Afghanistan only to die 6 months later in a drunk driving accident. Dorothy had never told Marcus she was James's mother. She just watched, brought him sandwiches he barely touched, made excuses to check on him, worried in the way mothers worry, even for sons who aren't theirs. And Connor, sweet Connor, spent his weekends drawing pictures of him and his dad with an empty space between them, as if his 8-year-old heart knew something was missing, but couldn't name it. None of them knew that everything was about to change. None of them knew about the man who'd been watching Marcus's garage from across the street, or the list he kept, or the photos of German shepherds he'd crossed out in red. Dorothy's morning had started normally enough. She'd opened the junkyard at 6, like always, walked the perimeter to check the fencing. The heat had been building since sunrise, and by 2 in the afternoon, it was the kind of dangerous that made the news tell people to stay inside. She'd gone to lunch at Rosa's Diner, come back around 2:30. That's when she heard it. At first, she thought it was the wind pushing sheet metal around. But no, this was different, rhythmic, desperate, metal scraping, and underneath that sound, something else, whimpering. Dorothy followed the noise through rows of gutted vehicles and twisted steel, past the mountain of crushed cars in the back corner where nobody ever went. That's where she found them. 2 military-style crates, the kind built to transport dangerous animals. Heavy-gauge steel, reinforced corners, padlocks on every latch. Someone had gone to a lot of trouble to make sure nothing got out. The crates were positioned in full sun, no shade, no shelter. The metal radiated heat like a furnace. Dorothy approached the first cage, her shadow falling across it. The scratching stopped. She bent down, knees protesting, and looked inside. A German shepherd, black and tan coat matted with dirt, and worse, his ribs stood out like piano keys. His right hind leg was bent at an angle that made Dorothy's stomach turn. Fresh wounds crossed his back, some infected, some still bleeding. But what broke her heart was his position. He dragged himself to the front of the cage, body angled to block the view of the second crate behind him, still protecting, even now, even like this. His amber eyes found hers, watched her, wary, but not aggressive. Then his tail moved, just once, just barely. A question. Hope. Dorothy looked at the second cage. Smaller dog, female, brown coat, curled in the corner, shaking despite the brutal heat. Her left eye was clouded over, blinded. She wouldn't even look at Dorothy. Just kept her face turned to the wall, whimpering. Dorothy checked her watch. Nearly 3 o'clock. Temperature display on her phone read 110 degrees. She touched the metal of the cages and jerked her hand back. Hot enough to burn. These dogs hadn't been here long, maybe overnight. In this heat, anything longer, and they'd be dead. Someone had dumped them here recently, deliberately, left them to die slow. She pulled out her phone, called Animal Control first, voicemail. Budget cuts meant limited staff. She tried the rescue center. "We can get someone out in 48 hours, the receptionist said. 48 hours these dogs didn't have. Dorothy looked next door at Webb's garage. Marcus's truck sat in the lot. She hesitated. The man had barely spoken more than 10 words to her in 3 years. Kept to himself, kept his pain locked up tight, just like these dogs in their cages. But she had no choice. She found Marcus under a Chevy, just his legs visible. "Marcus, I need help." He rolled out, wiping oil from his hands. Wouldn't meet her eyes. "Kind of busy. Dorothy, there are dogs locked in cages, dying in this heat." She watched his whole body go rigid at the word dogs. "I can't lift them by myself. Nobody else can come for 2 days. Marcus's hands stopped moving. He stared at the wrench in his palm. like he'd forgotten what it was for. "Dogs," he repeated. "German shepherds." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or fear. He took a step back. "Call someone else." "There is nobody else." "Marcus." "They'll be dead by morning." "I can't." His voice went rough. "I'm sorry, I just can't." Dorothy had lost her son. She knew what grief looked like when it was still fresh, still bleeding. Marcus was drowning in it, had been drowning for 3 years. But right now, she didn't have time for gentle, "Yes, you can," she said. "You're coming with me? Right now." Something in her tone made him look up. She was already walking back toward the junkyard. After a long moment, she heard footsteps behind her. The walk over took less than a minute, but felt longer. Marcus's breathing had changed, harsh and uneven. His hands were shaking. Dorothy had seen veterans before, knew what a trigger looked like. When they reached the cages, Marcus stopped 10 feet away. The smell hit him first. Blood and metal and fear. His vision swam. For a second, he wasn't in Arizona anymore. He was back in that desert, that other desert, holding Max while his dog's blood soaked into the sand. Then he heard it, a whimper. He looked at the cage. The German shepherd inside turned his head, made eye contact. Those amber eyes, so much like Max's eyes, full of pain and something else. Something that looked like trust, even now, even after everything. The dog's tail moved, one small wag, and Marcus understood. This dog had been beaten, starved, left to die, should have given up, should have been vicious or terrified or broken. But he was still trying, still hoping, still protecting the smaller dog behind him. Marcus dropped to his knees 5 feet from the cage. His hand shook worse now. He couldn't breathe right. But he made himself look, really look. Compound fracture on the right leg, dehydration, malnutrition, lacerations across the back. The dog needed surgery. Needed it soon, would die without it. Behind him, the female was in even worse shape, blind in one eye, psychological trauma written in every trembling line of her body. Marcus looked at his shaking hands, looked at the dog watching him, remembered Max's last moment, that final heartbeat fading under his palms. Never again, he'd promised himself. But this dog wasn't Max, and this dog was still alive, still trying. Marcus stood up. "Get bolt cutters," he told Dorothy. "We move them now." Dorothy cut through the padlocks while Marcus prepared his truck. He grabbed every blanket from the garage, filled bottles with water, moved fast because thinking meant hesitating, and hesitating meant watching these dogs die. Opening the first cage was harder than he'd expected. The door creaked, and the German shepherd flinched, but didn't move. Too weak, or too protective of the smaller dog behind him, Marcus crawled inside the cramped space, his shoulders brushing the hot metal walls. Every combat instinct screamed at him. Confined spaces, the smell of blood. He was back in that field hospital tent, back in the Humvee after the explosion, back in every nightmare he'd had for 3 years. But the dog was watching him with those amber eyes. And Marcus kept moving. He slid his arms under the dog's body. Careful of the broken leg, 70 pounds of German shepherd, mostly bones now. The dog whimpered but didn't snap, didn't fight, just let this stranger lift him. Marcus felt the dog's heartbeat against his chest, rapid and weak, and the echo was so loud in his head he almost dropped him. Max's heartbeat fading, Max's blood on his hands, Max's eyes going dim. Marcus didn't drop him. He kept walking. He settled the dog on the passenger seat, layered blankets underneath. The dog's breathing was shallow. Fever heat radiated from his body. Marcus started the engine, one hand on the dog's chest, feeling that heartbeat, still there, still fighting. Dorothy had better luck with the smaller dog. The female wouldn't let anyone near her, pressed against the back corner of her cage, shaking. But when the male dog made a low sound from Marcus's truck, she inched forward. Dorothy didn't try to grab her, just picked up the whole cage, carried it to her car. The female would only follow if she could see him. Dorothy had already called ahead. Dr. Sarah Mitchell at the Animal Rescue Center had agreed to meet them, even though it was after hours, even though she was supposed to be off duty. Marcus followed Dorothy's car through Phoenix traffic, driving too fast, running yellow lights. The dog's breathing got more labored. Marcus pressed harder on the gas. They screeched into the parking lot at 6:15. A woman in scrubs waited outside, 30 feet from the door. When she saw Marcus lift the dog from the truck, she was already moving, already triaging, calling out medical terms that Marcus recognized from his combat medic training. Sarah Mitchell was 28 and efficient. No wasted movement. She got the dog onto an examination table in 30 seconds flat, her hands moving over his body with practiced precision. Marcus stood back, watching her work, seeing the same focused intensity he'd had in field hospitals. She knew what she was doing. The examination took 5 minutes. Sarah's face didn't change, but Marcus could read the news in her posture. Bad, real bad. She turned to them, pulling off her gloves. Compound fracture, right hind leg, infected multiple healed fractures, evidence of prolonged abuse, cigarette burns on the paw pads, malnutrition, 15 pounds underweight, severe dehydration, and sepsis. Early stages. The infection was spreading. Surgery, immediately. Within the hour or he'd be dead by morning. Survival rate, 40%. Cost, $12,000. Marcus pulled out his wallet. $347 cash, 1 credit card, already maxed from last month's garage repairs. He had $3,200 in savings. That was it. That was everything between him and losing his business. Dorothy offered $1,000. Everything she could spare on a junkyard operator's budget. Sarah waited, silent, her eyes on Marcus. The math was simple, impossible, but simple. His garage payment was $2,400 a month. Connor's child support, $800. Living expenses, another $1,500. His savings wouldn't even cover 1 month, let alone a $12,000 surgery he couldn't afford. The rational choice was right there. Euthanasia, humane, quick, no suffering. This wasn't his dog, wasn't his responsibility. He'd tried. Nobody could say he hadn't tried. But the dog was still watching him from the table, still had that look in his eyes, that trust, that hope. After everything someone had done to him, after being locked in a cage and left to die, he was still choosing to trust. And Marcus thought about Connor. His boy came to visit in 5 days. How would he explain this dad let a dog die because of money? What kind of lesson was that? What kind of man did that make him? He thought about Max, about that promise he'd made. Never again. Never another dog. The pain was too much. But Max had died saving him. This dog was dying protecting another dog. Same loyalty, same heart, Same deserving to live. Marcus looked at Sarah and asked about payment plans. She shook her head. Clinic policy, no exceptions. He pulled out his credit card, the one that was already maxed, told her to run it anyway. Bill him whatever went through. He'd figure out the rest later. Sarah looked surprised. She'd seen something in his face. The trembling hands, the shallow breathing, the sweat, peatist, obvious to anyone who knew the signs. She asked if he was okay. He lied and said fine. She didn't believe him, but nodded and started prepping for surgery. The waiting room had 6 chairs and fluorescent lights that hummed too loud. Marcus sat down at 6:47. Surgery would take 4 to 6 hours. Dorothy sat beside him. Neither spoke. 7 o'clock, Marcus paced. 8 o'clock, sat down, leg bouncing. 9 o'clock, Dorothy brought coffee. Marcus stared at it until it went cold. 10 o'clock, head in his hands. 11 o'clock, Dorothy had fallen asleep in her chair. Marcus was still wide awake. The waiting room lights flickered. Marcus blinked, and he was somewhere else. Afghanistan, twining desert sun instead of fluorescent bulbs. The explosion still ringing in his ears. He was on the ground. Couldn't hear, couldn't see straight. Looked up, insurgent, rifle raised. Marcus knew he was dead. Then Max was there. 70 pounds of fur and fury, hitting the insurgent, taking the bullets meant for Marcus's head. 4 shots. Marcus heard them like they were happening now. Max went down. Marcus crawled to him, hands already covered in blood, already knowing it was too late. He tried anyway. Pressure on the wounds, talking to Max, telling him to stay, to hold on. Please hold on. Max's eyes found his, stayed on his face. Max's paw lifted, pressed against Marcus's hand. One last touch, then nothing. Heartbeat gone, light gone from those eyes. Marcus had stayed there, holding his dog's body, until someone pulled him away. He'd made a promise that day, never again, never love something that could be taken away like that. Someone was shaking his shoulder. Dorothy, her face creased with worry. Marcus came back, gasping, covered in sweat. His hands were gripping the chair arms so hard his knuckles were white. Dorothy was using that grounding technique, telling him where he was, what year it was, here and now. Phoenix, 'twas safe. Marcus realized he was crying. First time in 3 years anyone had seen him break. Dorothy sat back down beside him, started talking, quiet and steady. Her son James, same unit as Marcus in Afghanistan. James had written letters home, mentioned Webb, the medic who'd saved his life twice. Marcus looked up, confused, starting to remember. James Hayes, good kid, 22, made it home. Dorothy nodded too. James died 2 months after coming home. Car accident. But before that, he'd been different. Shut down, stopped talking, just like Marcus. Dorothy had watched her son disappear inside his own head, and then he was gone before she could reach him. She'd recognized Marcus 3 years ago when he'd opened the garage next door, had been watching him shut down the same way, trying to find the right moment to tell him, to reach him. This, she figured, was that moment. Marcus understood then. He wasn't alone in this. Never had been. The surgery room doors opened at 12:23. Sarah emerged, exhausted, still in her scrubs. Marcus stood. Dorothy grabbed his arm. Sarah pulled down her mask. Pause. Long enough that Marcus's heart stopped. The dog made it. Barely. But he had hit. The dog survived the night. That was the first miracle. Sarah kept him in the ICU, monitors beeping, IV lines running fluids and antibiotics. The external fixator pins in his leg looked like something from a torture device. Marcus hadn't left. He'd slept in his truck in the parking lot, came back in when the clinic opened at 7. Sarah was surprised to see him. Most people dropped animals off and disappeared. Marcus asked if he could see the dog. She led him back to recovery. The dog was sedated but semi-conscious. When Marcus approached, those amber eyes opened. Recognition flickered across his face. Marcus stood at a distance, didn't want to crowd him, just wanted him to know he wasn't alone. He sat on the floor beside the cage, didn't touch, just stayed there. 20 minutes of silence. The dog watched him the whole time. Then his eyes closed. Sleep, not death. Marcus could see his chest rising and falling. He stayed another hour. A routine established itself over the next week. Marcus opened the garage at 6, worked until 10, drove to the clinic, sat with the dog for an hour, back to the garage at noon, another visit at 3, closed the shop at 6, spent 7 to 9 at the clinic, sitting on that floor, talking quietly, telling the dog about his day, about Max, about things he'd never told anyone. The smaller dog, the female, was still in her cage, terrified, wouldn't eat unless she could see the male. Sarah moved the cages next to each other. The female calmed slightly, started eating small amounts, but only when he ate first. Their bond was survival made visible. Day 5. Something changed. Marcus was on his routine visit, talking to the dog about nothing important, and he reached his hand toward the cage. The dog watched his hand approach. Marcus stopped, let him decide. Let him have the choice nobody had given him in that junkyard. The dog was still weak, moving hurt, but he inched forward anyway, dragging himself across the pet floor. His nose touched Marcus's fingers through the bars. 3 seconds of contact, then he pulled back, exhausted from the effort. Marcus didn't move, just sat there with the tears running down his face, quiet, while the dog's tail moved, just barely, just enough. Sarah saw it happen, saw something in Marcus shift. That night, she asked him what his plan was after the dog healed. He hadn't thought that far ahead. Living day to day, surgery to recovery, hour to hour, Sarah pointed out the obvious. The dog would need a home. Couldn't stay at the clinic forever, but Marcus's apartment was small, no yard. He was gone 10 hours a day. Had PTSD that made him wake up screaming. It was the worst possible situation for a dog, especially one this traumatized. But when he looked at the dog, and the dog looked back, Marcus heard himself say he'd figure it out. By the end of week 1, the dog was standing, wobbly, weak but standing, eating on his own. The change in Marcus was just as visible. He was sleeping better, still had nightmares, but less frequent, less violent. Dorothy noticed, approved without saying anything. Day 9 was a Friday. Marcus was at the garage when Rachel's car pulled into the lot at 4 in the afternoon. Not his weekend. Connor climbed out with his backpack, and Marcus's first thought was something was wrong. Rachel looked tired. She was 7 months pregnant now, showing clear. Her new husband was deployed to Iraq. She'd moved back from Seattle temporarily, too far from family. Needed help. Could Connor stay with Marcus for 2 weeks? Marcus wanted to say yes immediately, wanted his son there every day, but fear stopped his tongue. What if he had an episode? What if he wasn't good enough? What if Connor saw how broken his father really was? Connor was watching him with those hopeful eyes. Marcus said yes. That evening, Marcus brought Connor to the clinic. Had to explain why Dad had been spending every free moment there. He kept it simple, found a dog who needed help, helping him heal. Connor's eyes went wide when he saw the German Shepherd. The dog was more alert now, medications reduced. When he saw the child, his ears pricked forward. Connor asked if he could touch him. Sarah said gently, he'd been hurt badly. Connor approached slowly, sat on the floor beside the cage, started talking to the dog in a soft voice, the way kids do, natural and unself-conscious. The dog responded. Tail wagging increased. He moved closer to the bars. Connor reached through, let the dog sniff his hand, then touched his head so carefully it made Marcus's throat tight. Connor started crying. Not sad crying. Something else. Marcus knelt beside him, alarmed, asking what was wrong. Connor looked at his dad and said the dog was like him, hurt, but trying. That night at the apartment, Connor asked why Dad had helped the dog when he didn't have money. Marcus considered complicated answers about duty and guilt and redemption, gave the simple truth instead. He needed help. Connor said they didn't even have money, though. Marcus said some things matter more than money. Connor asked like what? Marcus said like keeping promises. Connor didn't ask what promise, but he understood something had shifted. The next morning, Marcus found a drawing on the kitchen table. Connor's artwork, a picture of 3 figures, Dad plus a dog plus Connor. Title at the top in crayon, Our Family. Marcus stared at it for a long time. Connor had been drawing pictures for months with empty spaces, gaps where something should be. Now the gap was filled with a dog neither of them owned, a dog that might still die. But Connor had drawn it anyway, had named it Family. Over the next week, Connor came to the clinic every day, did homework beside the dog's cage, read to him from school books. The dog improved faster with Connor there. Sarah noted it in her charts. Therapeutic effect, both directions. Marcus watched his son be gentle and patient and caring, and saw parts of Connor he'd been too broken to notice before. Day 12. Connor noticed the female dog cowering in the corner of her cage, asked about her. Sarah explained trauma, severe abuse, wouldn't trust humans. Connor asked if he could try. Nobody said no. A week of Connor sitting near the female's cage, not touching, just existing nearby, talking to her, reading aloud, letting her get used to his presence. Day 15, she inched closer. Day 16, she sniffed his hand. Day 17, she let him pat her head. Day 18, she put her head in his lap. Sarah cried watching it. Marcus stood in the doorway understanding what his 8-year-old son was teaching 2 grown adults. Healing wasn't linear, required patience, required showing up every day even when nothing seemed to change, required hope. Day 14 brought complications. Sarah finally got the male dog's microchip scanner working. The chip was registered to Phoenix K9 Training Academy. Dog's name in the system was Duke, registered 2 years ago as a training washout, too sensitive for police work. Adopted out to a rescue center called Positive Beginnings. Status 6 months ago showed adopted. Then 2 weeks ago, listed as missing. Sarah dug deeper, found a pattern that made her skin crawl. 3 other German Shepherds missing from the same rescue, same 3-month period, all former K9 training washouts, all listed as adopted, then missing. Police report filed, but no investigation. Huh? Too many cases, too few resources? They decided to visit the rescue center. The director, Margaret Chen, was cooperative and devastated, showed them records. All the adoptions looked legitimate on paper, names, addresses, references. But when they checked, every address was fake, every name led nowhere. Someone had been systematically scamming the system. Someone who knew how rescues worked. Margaret pulled up security footage. Same man in 4 different visits. Maybe 40 years old. Baseball cap pulled low. Face mostly obscured, but his bearing was distinctive. Military posture. Calm, knowledgeable about dogs. Too knowledgeable. Marcus watched the footage 3 times. Something about the man was familiar. Couldn't place it. But his veteran instincts were screaming. This man knew trauma. Knew it intimately. Day 16. Marcus felt it first. Being watched. He was closing the garage when the hair on his neck stood up. Turned around. Nothing obvious. But across the street, a truck with tinted windows, engine running. When Marcus looked directly at it, the truck drove away. Next 3 days. Same truck, different locations. Once near the clinic when Marcus was visiting Duke. Once near his apartment. Once at the junkyard. Dorothy mentioned seeing it too. Said yesterday the truck had parked in the lot. Driver seemed to be taking photos of the spot where they'd found the dogs. Drove away when she approached. Day 18. Marcus found a note tucked under his windshield wiper. Printed letters. Untraceable. Simple message. You have something that belongs to me. He brought it to the police. They took a report. Gave him a case number. No explicit threat. They said, not much they could do, but they'd keep an eye out. Marcus filed it away with a growing sense of dread. He didn't know that the man who'd left that note was named Trevor Blackwood. Didn't know Trevor was a former K-9 officer who'd lost his partner 3 years ago. Didn't know Trevor had been watching him for days, seeing the way Marcus cared for Duke, feeling a rage so pure it burned. Trevor sat in his truck outside the garage, watching through binoculars. Duke was supposed to be dead, should have died in that junkyard. Trevor had made sure of it. No water, broken leg, full sun, no escape. But somehow this veteran had found him, saved him. And now Duke was healing, getting better, getting to live when Rex hadn't gotten to live. The unfairness of it consumed Trevor. He'd loved Rex, been partners for 6 years, and one bad call, one moment of panic, and Rex was dead. Rex had died protecting Trevor from his own mistake. That guilt had eaten Trevor alive. His wife left, his job gone. VA therapy waitlist was 18 months. He'd spiraled, started seeing German shepherds everywhere. Everyone a reminder of what he'd lost, everyone undeserving. He'd started taking them, found the ones nobody wanted, the rescues, the washouts, the ones that had failed just like he'd failed, locked them up, made them suffer the way he suffered. And when they were broken enough, he left them to die in places nobody would find them until it was too late. 7 dogs so far. Duke was supposed to be number 7, but Duke had survived. And now Trevor had to finish what he started. Day 19. Marcus's world tilted again. This time it was the bills. He'd been avoiding the mail, avoiding the reality of what he'd done. But the stack on his kitchen table was too big to ignore anymore. clinic bill, $12,000 for surgery, $3,200 for aftercare, $15,200 total. Credit card statement mashed. The $5,000 his card had left had gone to the surgery. The rest Sarah had covered, told him they'd work out payment later. Now, later was here. His bank account was overdrawn. Payroll was due for his 2 mechanics. $2,400 he couldn't skip. They had families. Rent on the garage and apartment together was $1,800. Had to pay or lose his business and his home, utilities, $400. Connor's child support, $800. Legally required, food, $300. His PTSD medications, $150. Gas, $200. Total monthly expenses, $5,850. His income averaged $6,200 on good months. He had $350 left over. He'd used his savings on the surgery. That was gone. The math was brutal. $15,000 in debt would take him 43 months to pay off if he stopped eating, stopped driving, stopped existing. He sat at the kitchen table at midnight, bills spread out, calculator in hand, opened the drawer beside him. The gun was still there, had been there for 3 years. His life insurance policy was $250,000. Connor's future would be secure. Medical bills handled, Rachel wouldn't have to worry. He picked up the gun, felt its weight. Connor was asleep in the next room. Duke was at the clinic. Didn't know Marcus was falling apart. One trigger pull and everything would stop hurting. Footsteps in the hallway. Marcus shoved the gun back in the drawer, slammed it shut. Connor appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Couldn't sleep. He saw his dad's face, the tears, the bills everywhere. Sat down at the table without asking. Is it because of Duke? Connor asked. Marcus tried to say it wasn't the dog's fault. Connor saw the numbers anyway. Asked if Dad couldn't pay. Marcus said these were adult problems. Don't worry. Connor said he did worry. Connor disappeared into his room. Came back with his piggy bank, dumped it on the table. $127 in coins and bills. Allowance saved for 2 years. Here, Connor said. Marcus tried to refuse. Connor pushed the money toward him. Duke needs help. You need help. I'm helping. Marcus broke. Pulled Connor into a hug while his son patted his back. Connor said Dad always told him to help people who need help. Duke needs help. You need help. I'm helping. Where did this kindness come from? This certainty that love mattered more than money. Marcus realized he must have taught it somehow, even when he thought he was teaching nothing. Day 20, Dorothy heard about the bills. Small town. Word traveled. She found Marcus at the garage, made an offer. He could work at the junkyard on weekends. Extra $500 a month. Also, her late husband's life insurance. She could loan $5,000, no interest. Pay it back whenever. Marcus said he couldn't take charity. Dorothy said it wasn't charity. Said James would have done the same for him. Marcus remembered James Hayes, baby-faced kid who'd made it home. Remembered hearing about the car accident. Said, "Okay, thank you." Felt like breathing for the first time in days. Day 21. Sarah called him to the clinic. Said she hadn't seen him yesterday. Marcus explained about the bills. Might need to delay aftercare appointments. Sarah looked at him seriously. Duke still needed physical therapy. Couldn't skip it, or his leg wouldn't heal right. Marcus said he was trying. Sarah said she'd do the therapy pro bono. Marcus started to object. Sarah held up a hand, her clinic, her rules. Marcus asked why. Sarah hesitated, then told him about her sister, Emily. 16 years old, 5 years ago, dating an older guy, veteran, PTSD, untreated, got violent. Emily stayed because she thought he needed help. One night, an argument escalated. He was drunk, hit her, she fell. Head injury. Dead before the ambulance came. The guy had been a K-9 handler. Trial used PTSD as a defense. Reduced sentence. Sarah became a vet to save what she couldn't save then, looked at Marcus and said some things matter more than money. And maybe by saving Duke, she was saving Marcus. Saving something. Marcus understood then. They were all trying to save each other, all carrying ghosts. Duke was the one creature in this mess who wasn't haunted by anything except the present moment. And somehow that was healing all of them. Day 22 started with a phone call from Phoenix PD. Detective Chen had news. They'd matched the security footage from the rescue center to their database. The man adopting dogs was Trevor Blackwood, 42 years old, former K-9 officer with Phoenix PD. Decorated, multiple commendations, resigned 3 years ago after an incident involving his police dog. They had an address on file. Chen said they were going to question him. Marcus asked to come along. Request denied, police matter. Marcus hung up and immediately started searching online. The articles came up fast. Officer Trevor Blackwood and his German Shepherd Rex. Photos of them together at community events. Rex was beautiful, strong, the kind of dog that looked invincible. Multiple news stories about their work, drug busts, search and rescue, model cane team, then the incident report from 3 years ago. Shootout during a suspect apprehension. Rex killed in the line of duty, died protecting Officer Blackwood. The articles after that painted a different picture. Blackwood's wife filed for divorce 6 months later, PTSD diagnosis. Applied for disability, long VA wait list, resigned from the force. Then nothing. He disappeared from public record. Marcus stared at his own reflection in the computer screen, saw the same trajectory, lost Max. Shut down. Divorce? PTSD? The only difference was Marcus had found Duke before he'd spiraled too far. Trevor hadn't found anything, had fallen into a darkness Marcus recognized because he'd been standing at the edge of it himself. He felt empathy and horror in equal measure. Could have been me, he thought. 5 more bad days, and that could have been me. Sarah called 2 hours later with a theory. Trevor was taking German Shepherds because they reminded him of Rex, punishing them for surviving when Rex hadn't. Twisted logic. If Rex died, none of them deserved to live. Or maybe Trevor thought he should have died instead. So he was making them suffer the way he suffered. That evening, Chen called again. Trevor wasn't at his registered address. Apartment abandoned. Landlord hadn't seen him in weeks. Mail piled up. Inside, they'd found something that made Chen's voice go tight. The walls were covered with photos, Rex's entire life, puppy photos, training photos, on-duty photos, then the death scene, crime scene photos that Trevor shouldn't have had, and after that, photos of other German Shepherds, 7 dogs total, all of them crossed out in red marker. Duke and the female dog's photos were there too, not crossed out. Trevor knew they'd survived. They'd found journals, detailed plans, targeting German Shepherds systematically. Delusional reasoning about Rex, blaming himself, blaming Kish, making them pay. The most recent entry mentioned Duke specifically, said he was at the clinic, that a veteran had him. Last line said, "Take back what's mine. Finish it." Chen warned Marcus to be careful. Trevor was unstable, potentially dangerous. Marcus asked where Duke was. At the clinic? Overnight monitoring after his physical therapy. Marcus said he was going there. Chen said they'd send a patrol car. Marcus didn't wait. It was 9:47 when Marcus pulled into the clinic parking lot. Sarah's car was still there. She'd agreed to stay late so he could visit after Connor went to bed. The front lights were on, but something felt wrong. Marcus called her phone. No answer. He tried the door, locked. He went around back. The door was forced open. Alarm panel on the wall had been disabled. Marcus's heart kicked into overdrive. He moved inside, quiet, listening. Voices from the kennel area. Sarah's voice, tight with fear. A man's voice, unfamiliar. Marcus came around the corner and saw them. Sarah pressed against the wall. Trevor Blackwood standing 10 feet away, holding a tranquilizer gun, the kind used for large animals. Not lethal, but dangerous. Duke was in his recovery cage, awake, whimpering. The female dog was in the cage beside him, cowering. They both smelled Trevor, both terrified. Trevor turned when Marcus entered. Their eyes met. Two veterans recognizing each other across a room. Trevor's face was haggard, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "You," Trevor said. "You have him." Marcus kept his hands visible, unthreatening. "I do. Found him dying. He was supposed to die." Trevor's voice cracked. "Why isn't he dead? He didn't give up. Rex didn't give up." Trevor shouted. "Rex fought and died, and I'm still here. Why does that dog get to live when Rex is gone?" Marcus moved slowly closer, kept his voice calmed, even. "I lost my partner, too. Cadet's named Max. Afghanistan. He died saving me." Trevor's grip on the tranquilizer gun loosened slightly. "You understand, then? The guilt, every day. Why them and not us?" "I do understand. Every night I replay it. Wonder if I could have done something different. I did do something different." Trevor was crying now. "I gave the wrong order. Told Rex to engage. Should have held position. He followed my order and got shot because of it. I killed him. I killed Rex." Marcus took another step. "Combat decisions happen in seconds. You couldn't have known what would happen." "But I replay it," Trevor said. "Every moment. If I'd just said hold. If I'd moved faster. If I'd been better. Rex would do it again," Marcus said quietly. "That's what they do. They protect us. Not because of our orders. Because they love us. It's not our fault." Trevor lowered the gun to his side. His shoulders shook. "I just wanted the pain to stop. I wanted to feel anything except guilty. But I can't stop seeing his face. Can't stop hearing that last breath." Behind them, neither man heard the clinic's front door open. Connor had woken up at the apartment, found his dad gone, gotten scared. He'd walked the 4 blocks to the clinic. He pushed through the door calling for his dad. Trevor spun at the sound. Reflex. Combat training. Raised the tranquilizer gun toward the small figure in the doorway. Marcus screamed, "No!" Duke saw it all from his cage. The gun pointed at Connor. The child who'd sat beside his cage every day. Who'd read to him? Who'd been gentle when Duke was broken? Duke didn't think, didn't calculate, just acted. The cage door's latch had been weakened during his earlier panic. Duke hit it with his full weight. The door burst open. He launched himself at Trevor, despite the pain in his leg, despite the pins still in his bone, despite everything telling him to protect himself first. 70 pounds of German Shepherd hit Trevor from the side. The tranquilizer gun flew across the room. Trevor went down hard with Duke on top of him. Duke's teeth found Trevor's arm, not biting hard, just holding, warning, growling low in his chest. Marcus grabbed Connor, pulled him close, shielded him with his body. Sarah dove for the tranquilizer gun, kicked it into the corner. Trevor lay on the ground with Duke pinning him. He could have fought. Could have tried to get free. He didn't. Just looked up at the dog, started laughing and crying at the same time. "Of course," Trevor said. "Of course you saved the kid. That's what you do. That's what Rex did. Why can't I be like that? Why can't I let go?" Sirens outside. The patrol car Chen had sent. Officers burst through the door, guns drawn. Saw Trevor on the ground, Duke over him, shouted commands. Marcus called Duke off. The dog didn't respond at first. Still in protection mode, Marcus moved closer. Passes put his hand on Duke's neck. "It's okay, boy. You did good. You can let go now." Duke released Trevor's arm, tried to walk back to Marcus. His injured leg gave out. He collapsed, exhausted, the adrenaline gone, pain flooding back. Marcus dropped beside him, checking him over. The leg wasn't bleeding, but Duke was shaking, spent. Officers pulled Trevor to his feet. Read him his rights. He didn't resist. Just looked at Marcus as they led him toward the door. "Take care of him. He's better than me." "He's not better," Marcus said. "He's just different. He had help." Trevor nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. I just wanted the pain to stop." "I know," Marcus said. "Get help. The right kind this time." They took Trevor away. Sarah called for emergency vet backup. Duke's leg had refractured from the impact. The pins had shifted. Everything they'd worked for over 3 weeks, damaged in one heroic moment. Marcus sat on the floor, Duke's head in his lap, Connor pressed against his side. Sarah knelt beside them, checking Duke's vitals. The dog's eyes found Marcus's face. Tail gave one weak wag. "You saved my son," Marcus whispered. "Thank you, boy. Thank you." Connor was crying, petting Duke's head carefully. "Is he going to be okay?" Sarah's face was grim. "He needs surgery again." "Why, tonight." "But Marcus, this is the second break. The bone is compromised, but even with the surgery, I don't know if it will heal right, and there's a chance we'll find more damage." Marcus didn't hesitate. "Do whatever he needs. I'll find the money somehow." "We might be looking at amputation," Sarah said carefully. "Remove the leg entirely. He could live a good life on 3 legs. Might be the better option at this point." Marcus looked at Duke, the dog who'd been beaten and starved, who'd protected a smaller dog even while dying, who'd learned to trust again despite every reason not to, who'd just saved Connor without thinking about his own pain. This dog had survived everything. Amputation wouldn't stop him. "Save his life," Marcus said. "However you have to do it. He's earned the chance to keep fighting." Sarah nodded, started prepping. Officers took statements. Paramedics checked Connor over. Marcus stayed on the floor with Duke until Sarah was ready, talking to him, promising him everything would be okay. Duke went into surgery at 1:15 in the morning. Marcus, Connor, and Dorothy sat in that waiting room again, waiting to see if Duke would survive his second surgery, survive saving the boy he'd only known for 2 weeks. Outside, Trevor Blackwood sat in the back of a police car, hands cuffed, staring at nothing, thinking about Rex, thinking about Duke, wondering if maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to choose something different than destruction. Duke survived the second surgery, but barely. Sarah had to use bone grafts this time. pins and plates to hold everything together. The leg was a mess. Recovery would be longer, harder. The infection came back on day 3, spreading despite heavy antibiotics. Duke stopped eating on day 5. Lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. By day 7, fever spiked to dangerous levels. ICU monitoring around the clock. Marcus moved into the clinic, slept on the floor beside Duke's cage. Sarah didn't argue. She understood. Dorothy brought him food he barely touched. Connor visited after school every day until Rachel came to take him back to Seattle on day 30. Connor didn't want to go. Cried when his mother said it was time. School had started. He'd already missed 2 weeks. Marcus knelt down, told him he had to go, promised Duke would be okay. Connor looked at his dad with those knowing eyes and asked if that was true. Marcus couldn't lie to his son, said he'd try. He'd try so hard. Connor hugged Duke through the cage bars. Duke, weak and feverish, still managed to lick Connor's hand. Connor whispered something Marcus couldn't hear. Duke's tail moved once. Connor left crying. Marcus stood at the window watching Rachel's car disappear, feeling like he was losing everything again. The weeks crawled by. Week 5 brought slight improvement. Duke eating a little, temperature down. Week 6 threw them backward. The leg wasn't healing. X-rays showed the bone wasn't fusing. Sarah's face when she looked at the films told Marcus everything. Week 7. Duke's appetite disappeared again. Week 8. He was noticeably weaker. Spent most of his time sleeping. Day 60, Sarah did a routine check. Standard X-ray to monitor the leg healing. She was in the room for a long time. When she came out to the waiting area, Marcus knew. He'd seen that look before. On field medics in Afghanistan when they knew, on doctors at VA hospitals. The look that said there were no good options left. Sarah closed her office door, asked Marcus to sit. He stayed standing. She pulled up the X-ray on her computer screen, pointed to shadows on Duke's ribs, dark patches that shouldn't be there. She'd ordered a full-body scan. 3 hours of waiting while machines hummed and Duke lay still and Marcus paced holes in the linoleum. Osteosarcoma, bone cancer, aggressive type, started in the original injury site in his leg, spread to his ribs, possibly his lungs. Sarah's voice was steady, clinical, but her hands shook, pulling up the scans. Marcus asked about treatment. Surgery. Amputation of the leg might buy time. Sarah said, remove the source. But the cancer was already spreading. Chemo existed for dogs, but effectiveness was limited. Side effects, brutal. Prognosis with treatment, 6 to 12 months. Quality of life, questionable at best. Marcus asked what she would do. Sarah was quiet for a long time, then honest. She'd make him comfortable, let him have good months instead of painful years. Without treatment, maybe 4 to 6 months. With pain management, he could have quality time, not just existence, live. Marcus asked to see Duke. Sarah led him to the recovery room, left them alone. Duke was awake, watching the door. When Marcus came in, his tail wagged, still hopeful, still trying. Marcus sat beside the cage, reached in, touched Duke's head. The dog pressed into his hand. Marcus talked to him for an hour, explained what the doctor said, apologized for not being able to fix this, for saving him from one death just to watch him face another. Duke didn't understand the words, but understood the tone, licked the tears off Marcus's face, stayed close, offered the only comfort he knew how to give. Presence, love, being there, The next day, Marcus called Rachel, had to tell Connor, put the phone on speaker. Connor's voice was small, scared. Asked if Duke was dying, but Marcus said yes, very sick. Connor was silent for a long time, then asked how long. Marcus said maybe 6 months. Connor asked if he could visit. Marcus said of course, any time, as much as possible. Day 62. Something unexpected happened. A reporter from a local news station called. They'd heard about the story. Veteran saves abused dogs. Dog saves veteran son. Now the dog is terminal. Asked if Marcus would do an interview. He said no 3 times. Sarah convinced him on the 4th ask. Said Duke's story could help other animals, other veterans. The interview aired that evening. Marcus, uncomfortable on camera, talking about finding Duke, about Duke choosing to trust despite everything, about Duke protecting Connor. The reporter asked what Duke meant to him. Marcus looked at the camera and said everything. Duke gave him a reason to wake up, gave him his son back, gave him purpose. The reporter asked, what now? Marcus said make every day count, show Duke what his love meant, and when the time came, be there, hold him, let him know he wasn't alone, the way Duke had never let Marcus be alone. The segment went viral overnight, picked up by national news, shared thousands of times on social media. Comments flooded in. Veterans saying their dogs saved them too. Cancer survivors saying make memories while you can. Parents saying they were teaching their kids about love through Duke's story. Strangers saying Duke represented a hope, represented choosing to live despite the pain. Someone started a GoFundMe, goal $20,000 for Duke's care. Day 1, $8,300. Day 2, $15,000. Day 3, $34,000. Marcus was overwhelmed, sat at the clinic, reading comments on his phone with tears streaming down his face. My dog saved me when I came home from Iraq. Make every moment count. Lost my dog to cancer last year. The time we had was worth the pain of losing him. Teaching my kids that love means showing up, even when it hurts. Sarah found him like that, sat beside him, said people saw themselves in his story, saw their own pain, their own hope. Duke had become bigger than one dog. He was proof that broken things could heal, that love mattered more than time, that choosing to try was always worth it. Day 67 brought an envelope from the Arizona State Psychiatric Hospital. Marcus stared at it for 5 minutes before opening. Inside, a letter, handwritten, from Trevor Blackwood. Trevor wrote about treatment, group therapy, individual counseling, diagnosed with complex PT, major depression, dissociative episodes, understanding now what he'd done, that he'd been sick, not an excuse, but an explanation. Rex's death had broken something fundamental. Duke had reminded him of every failure. Taking the dogs was a last attempt to control something, anything. When his whole world felt out of control, he was seeing clearly now, felt crushing guilt. Apologized to Marcus, to Duke, to every dog he'd hurt, asked how Duke was doing. Marcus read the letter 3 times, sat down and wrote back, told Trevor that Duke was dying, cancer. But Duke was happy now, loved, protected, had purpose. That's all any of them wanted. Trevor had been sick. Marcus wrote, got help. That's what mattered. Rex would forgive him. Duke already had. Dogs didn't hold grudges. Now Trevor needed to forgive himself. From one veteran who was trying to do the same. Day 70 brought Dorothy to the clinic with news. She'd sold the junkyard. Property was valuable. Desert land near the city. got 200,000, told Marcus she was donating 50,000, specifically for starting a rescue program for dogs like Duke, for veterans like Marcus and Trevor. Marcus tried to refuse. Dorothy said James would want this. Said Marcus was doing what her son couldn't, living, choosing life every day despite the pain. Also, she was moving to assisted living. Too old for running a junkyard alone. Wanted a legacy. This was it. Marcus accepted. Hugged her. This woman who'd been a stranger 4 months ago, who'd lost her son but chose to honor him by helping others, who saw Marcus drowning and threw him a rope disguised as 2 dogs in cages. That night, Marcus lay on the floor beside Duke's cage. Duke was sleeping, breathing steady. Pain medications keeping him comfortable. Marcus watched him and thought about time. 4 to 6 months, maybe less, maybe more. However long they had, he'd make it count. Duke had taught him something important. Life wasn't about how long you lived. It was about how much you loved while you were here, how many lives you touched, how many people you saved just by refusing to give up. Duke had saved Marcus, had saved Connor, had even, in a strange way, saved Trevor by forcing him to face what he'd become, all because one dog chose to keep fighting when it would have been easier to quit. Marcus reached through the bars, rested his hand on Duke's side, felt him breathing. "However long we've got, boy," he whispered, "we'll make it matter." Day 75. Sarah noticed something odd about the female dog, Bella. Connor had named her. She was acting strange, nesting behavior, pacing, restless. Sarah did an examination and found what she hadn't expected. Bella was pregnant, had been pregnant during the rescue. The stress and trauma had delayed the obvious signs. She was due in 2 weeks. Marcus didn't know if this was another complication or a gift. Sarah said it was hope, new life, something good coming from all this darkness. Day 88. Bella went into labor. 4 hours. Sarah and Marcus assisted, while Connor watched via video call from Seattle. 3 puppies born. The first was a male, strong and vocal, black and tan like Duke. The second was a female, smaller, brown coat like her mother. The third came last, another male. He didn't breathe. Sarah tried for 10 minutes, resuscitation, massage. Everything she knew, nothing worked. She finally wrapped the tiny body in a towel, set him aside. Bella smelled her dead baby, made a sound Marcus had never heard from a dog before. Grief, pure and simple. Then Bella did something that broke them all. She pushed the surviving puppies away, wouldn't nurse them, wouldn't look at them. Trauma had taken too much. She couldn't do this, couldn't be a mother when she was still so broken herself. Sarah and Marcus took over, bottle feeding every 2 hours, around the clock. They took shifts. Marcus would feed them at midnight, 2, 4, and 6. Sarah handled the day shift. The puppies were tiny, helpless, needed constant warmth and care. Duke, despite his weakness, dragged himself to the box where the puppies slept, lay down beside them, became the parent Bella couldn't be. The puppies crawled to him, seeking his warmth. Duke accepted them, cleaned them, protected them, even dying. He was still giving. Connor named them over video call. The male was Max, for Marcus's war dog. The female was Hope. Self-explanatory. Marcus's throat was too tight to speak when he heard the names. Day 95 brought a phone call Marcus had been dreading. Rachel's lawyer. Custody review had been triggered by the viral news story. Rachel was concerned about Connor's exposure to trauma. Dying dog, father with PTSD. Dangerous situations with Trevor. Court date set for day 120. The case against Marcus was clear. He'd used Connor's college fund for a dog, exposed Connor to violence, had unstable mental health, was financially irresponsible. Connor had missed school to visit. The list went on. Marcus's defense felt thin. Connor's grades had improved. His behavior was better. Marcus was in formal therapy now, paid for by the GoFundMe surplus. Finances were stable thanks to donations. Duke was helping, not hurting. But how did you prove that in court, day 100? Connor wrote a letter to the judge, mailed it without telling either parent, explained that Dad was better now because of Duke, that he was learning what love really meant, sacrifice, showing up, being there even when it hurt. Duke was family. Dad was Dad again. Please don't take me from them. Rachel's lawyer sent a copy to Marcus. He read it 3 times, crying harder each time. Day 105 brought an unexpected visitor to the clinic, a woman in her mid-30s, professional clothes, nervous energy. She asked to see the dog from the news story. Said his name was Duke. Said he used to be hers. Sarah checked the microchip records. The woman was telling the truth. Jennifer Walsh, registered owner from 3 years ago. She'd surrendered Duke to Positive Beginnings Rescue 2 years ago when her husband got a job that didn't allow pets. According to state law, she had 5 years to reclaim him. Legally, Duke was still hers. Marcus felt the ground drop out from under him. $25,000 spent saving Duke, months of recovery. Duke was dying anyway, and this woman could just take him. Jennifer brought photo albums. Duke as a puppy, young and healthy and happy. She explained about the job, the move, the no pets policy, said she'd regretted it immediately, tried to get him back from the rescue. They told her he'd been adopted, thought she'd lost him forever. Then she saw the news story, recognized him instantly. Marcus made himself ask if she wanted him back. Jennifer hesitated, said yes, then no, then looked at the photos and started crying. She had 2 kids now, limited funds. Husband worked long hours. Then Marcus told her the rest. Duke had cancer, 4 to 6 months left, needed expensive care, daily medications, constant monitoring. Jennifer's face went pale. She hadn't known, hadn't seen that part of the story. She asked questions, prognosis, treatment, cost. Marcus answered honestly, watched her process the information, saw the moment she realized she couldn't handle this, loved Duke but couldn't give him what he needed now. She withdrew her claim, but asked if she could visit, bring her kids to meet him. Marcus said of course. She came the next day with 2 children under 5. Duke's tail wagged when he saw her, remembered. The kids were gentle, awed by this big dog who'd been on TV. Jennifer cried, petting Duke's head, telling him she was sorry for giving him up, sorry she couldn't take him now. But he was in good hands, better hands than hers had been. Marcus walked her to her car. She turned before getting in. You gave him his life back, Dad, she said. I just gave him life. There's a difference. Thank you for loving him. Marcus watched her drive away, went back inside to where Duke lay with the puppies curled against him. Max and Hope, new life born from all this pain. Duke teaching them to be brave even as he was dying, showing them what love looked like. Sarah was bottle-feeding Hope, looked up at Marcus. "Big day?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "Big day." Tomorrow was day 106, 14 days until the custody hearing. Duke's time was running out. But today, right now, there were puppies to feed and a dog to love and moments to make count. That's what Duke had taught him. You didn't get to choose how much time you had. You only got to choose what you did with it. Day 120. The courthouse felt cold despite the Arizona heat outside. Marcus sat at a table with his lawyer, watching Rachel and her attorney across the aisle. Connor sat in the gallery between Dorothy and Sarah, too young to testify formally but old enough to have written that letter. The judge reviewed evidence for an hour. Rachel's case emphasized stability. Good schools in Seattle, two-parent home, financial security, no exposure to trauma or violence. Marcus's case showed transformation. Therapy records, financial statements proving the GoFundMe had stabilized everything. Connor's improved grades, letters from teachers noting positive changes in behavior and attitude. Then the judge read Connor's letter aloud. Every word. The courtroom was silent, except for the judge's voice and the sound of Rachel, crying quietly. When the judge finished, she asked if Connor wanted to speak. He did. Connor stood, walked to the front, looked at the judge with 8-year-old solemnity, and said his dad had been sad for a long time, since before the divorce, since the war. Connor didn't understand it then, thought maybe it was his fault. But then Duke came, and Dad smiled again. Duke taught Dad how to be Dad, taught Connor that love meant action, not words. Love meant showing up every day even when it was hard. The judge asked if Connor was scared of his father. Connor said no. He used to be scared for his dad. Now Dad was getting help. Duke helped him ask for help. Wasn't that what everyone wanted? The judge took a recess, came back 20 minutes later with her ruling. Modified custody, 50-50 split, increased from before. Conditions were that Marcus continued therapy and maintained financial stability. Review in 1 year. Both parents accepted. Connor hugged Marcus in the courtroom while Rachel watched. Not angry, just sad about everything they'd all lost and found again. The next 60 days were the best of Duke's life. Connor flew down for Thanksgiving. Duke wore a paper pilgrim hat Connor made, sat at the table while they ate. Marcus taught Duke new tricks, gentle ones within his capabilities. Duke visited the local veteran center every week, spending time with soldiers who understood what it meant to survive something that should have killed you. Trevor came once, supervised by his therapist. He broke down when he saw Duke, got on the floor, and apologized while Duke walked over, sniffed him, then licked his face. Forgiveness, that simple, that complete. Trevor cried for 20 minutes while Duke sat beside him, patient and present. After that, Trevor started volunteering at animal shelters, started choosing healing instead of destruction. But by day 150, the decline was visible. Duke's walks got shorter. He slept more. Eating became difficult. Pain medication increased. Marcus knew what was coming, discussed it with Sarah and Connor. They all agreed when the time came, they'd be there together the last 2 weeks. They made a list, things Duke should do before he couldn't do anything. They took him to the beach, first time seeing the ocean. Duke sniffed the water, confused, then joyful, splashing in the shallows while Marcus and Connor laughed. They went to a fancy restaurant with an outdoor patio. The chef made Duke a special plate, real steak, medium rare. Duke ate every bite. Connor had a sleepover at Marcus's apartment. They watched movies with Duke on the couch between them, both of them petting him. Memorizing the feel of his fur, Duke visited the VA hospital one last time. Saw 15 veterans. Each one cried. Each one thanked him. Each one understood they were saying goodbye. A photographer volunteered to take portraits. Beautiful, professional images of Duke with Marcus, with Connor, with Pariah, with Dorothy, with Max and Hope. Paw print molds were made. 2 of them, keepsakes that would last after memory faded. Day 176, Duke stopped eating. Day 177, he couldn't stand without help. Day 178. His eyes showed pain even through the medication. Day 179. Marcus made the call. Sarah said she'd come to the apartment. Duke could go at home, surrounded by family. January 1st, New Year's Day. The sun rose over Phoenix and Duke was still alive, but barely. Marcus had called Rachel. She put Connor on a plane without hesitation. He arrived by noon. Sarah came at 11 with everything she needed. Dorothy was already there. Even Bella came, finally approaching Duke after months of distance. She lay down next to him. Full circle. They gathered in Marcus's living room. Duke on his bed, Marcus holding his head, Connor holding his paw. Sarah prepared the injection. Marcus talked to Duke through tears, thanked him for everything, for saving his life, for giving him purpose, for teaching him what love really meant, for bringing his family back, for helping 47 veterans find peace, for Connor's smile, for everything. Connor's voice was steady despite his tears. Duke, you're the best dog ever. You taught Dad to be Dad again. You taught me to be brave. We'll take care of Max and Hope. We'll tell them about you. We'll never forget. Sarah administered the injection. Duke looked at Marcus. His tail moved once. Small, final. Marcus whispered, I love you, boy. Duke's eyes closed. His breathing slowed, then stopped. 11:47 in the morning. Marcus held him for an hour afterward, sobbing, Connor crying into his father's shoulder, Sarah crying silently, checking to confirm what they all knew. Duke was gone. 6 months later, July, the grand opening of Second Chance's Rescue and Therapy Center, built on the old Junkyard property, funded by the GoFundMe surplus and Dorothy's donation. Modern facility, focus on German Shepherds and veterans with PTSD. 15 dogs already paired with 15 veterans. Staff included Marcus as director, Sarah as head veterinarian, Dorothy as volunteer coordinator. Trevor, therapy complete, worked there too, helping save what he'd once tried to destroy. Connor spent his summer there, age 9 now, confident and kind. Bella had become a therapy dog for trauma survivors. Max and Hope were in training, learning their father's legacy. The centerpiece was a bronze statue of Duke. Plaque read, Duke the dog who taught us to live, with his dates and the word hero, healer, friend. Every veteran paused there. Every dog sniffed it. Marcus visited daily, talked to Duke, said we did it. Boy, we kept going. That evening, Marcus sat on a bench by Duke's statue watching the sunset. Connor joined him. Max and Hope, 9 months old now, sat with them. Connor asked if Duke knew about the center, about how many people he'd saved. Marcus looked at the statue, then his son, and said yes. He knows. Dogs always know when they're loved, and when their love matters. Connor said Duke mattered. Marcus agreed. Yeah, he did. Still does. The center was full of life. Dogs playing, veterans smiling, families whole again. All because one dog refused to give up, even dying, even scared. He chose love. So now they chose love too. That was Duke's legacy. That was everyone's legacy. Choosing love every single day. Duke's story reminds us of a truth we sometimes forget in our later years. It's never too late to choose love, never too late to find purpose, never too late to be saved by something we thought we were saving. Marcus believed his best days were behind him, that the war had taken everything worth having. Then a broken dog in a cage showed him different, showed him that damaged doesn't mean done, that scars don't disqualify you from mattering, that the second half of life can heal the first half if you're brave enough to try. We've all got our own cages, haven't we? Loss, regret, missed chances, bodies that don't work like they used to, dreams we thought were finished. But Duke taught us this love doesn't ask how much time you have left. It asks what you'll do with the time you've got. Every day is a choice. To shut down or open up, to protect our pain or share our hearts, to believe our story's over or trust there's still a chapter worth writing. What cage are you ready to open? What broken thing in your life turned out to be saving you? Share your story in the comments below. Someone needs to hear it today.